So this is the part where I kind of set down my facilitator hat and I put on my, hey, I'm the guest speaker hat. So this is officially the beginning of my talk today, which I called The Game of Life We Want to Play. I stand before you as a product of my ancestors. I carry with me their beliefs, their values, and their trauma. And we all pass down the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly, whether we're conscious of it or not. That's true for me. That's true for every parent. It's true for every child who becomes a parent. And given what I've been taught about the right way, as told to me by my elders, my teachers, my bosses, my peers, as I've received these messages about what the right way is, even if it's not the way that I organically want to go, it informs the decisions that I'm going to make. And my life is a result of a series of decisions that I've made. And I was thinking about this process that we all go through as we grow up. And I was remembering reading a book that was published back in 1997 by Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements. And in it, there's an opening called Domestication. And I went to find the information about domestication as he wrote it, because it was coming through me as I started writing this talk. And in it, he shares how all the rules and values of our family and society are imposed on us through a system of punishment and reward. So I wanted to ask, what comes to mind when you think about that phrase, punishment and reward? What does that mean? How did that show up in your life? And what it looked like for me was, as a young person, if I did what my elders wanted me to do, I was a good girl and maybe I'd get a cookie. And if I didn't do what my elders wanted me to do, I might go to bed without dinner. That never happened. Actually, the worst thing that happened was I didn't want to finish my dinner, and we left sitting at the table until I did. But anyway, it was this system of reward and punishment that is so common. And the author goes on to say, as little children, our true nature is to love and be happy, to explore and enjoy life. We are completely authentic in our child self. But when we learn to be what others think we should be, and because it's not okay for us to be what we are, we start pretending to be what we're not. And by the time we were teenagers, we learned to judge ourselves and punish ourselves and reward ourselves according to the agreements that we never chose. So I wanted to break this down because the statement that I just read defines my life's work, which really is twofold. Number one, it's to identify and explore the origins of what drives my belief system, and thus my decisions. And number two, to understand which part of me is in charge. Who's driving the car? So this process begins with awareness. Noticing who's in charge. Noticing that you're making a decision that maybe is organically for you. Maybe it is in alignment with your true heart's desire. Or maybe it's It's someone else's voice that has passed down a belief or an idea about how you ought to be. So whose voice am I listening to when I'm making a decision that impacts my life? And these decisions could be as simple as what time to get up, what to eat, or what to do next. Or they could be really big decisions, like, where am I going to live? Should I have a new partner? Is this a good job for me? So if there's some aspect of your life that you find yourself complaining about, then you may need to reckon with the fact that part of your life isn't bringing you as much joy as you thought it might have. And if you find yourself wondering why, there's a content or an ingredient of your life that isn't optimal, then you only need to look at the decisions that got you there and be curious about whose voice you were listening to. I know for me, when I listen to my own voice, then I'm living a life with no regret. Because even if I mess up and I find myself in a place that I don't want to be, I got myself there. I get to reckon with myself. But when I don't listen to my intuition and I'm following someone else's voice, then I'm living in a place of some blame or regret or resentment. Gives an opportunity for those negative emotions to creep in. And so I like to ask myself, what need was getting met if I made a decision that wasn't my own? Was it the need to be a good girl or be a good boy and follow some rules that may or may not be arbitrary? Was I listening to the voice of a teacher or a parent or a boss? In Dr. Miguel's story from the Four Agreements, we learn about the Book of Law. And the Book of Law rules our mind and the inner judge that makes us suffer because we never measure up to our image of perfection. And he goes on to say, all of our normal tendencies are lost in the process of domestication, and we begin to search for what we have lost. We search for freedom because we are no longer free. We search for happiness because we're no longer happy. We search for beauty because we no longer believe we are beautiful. What we are searching for is ourself. And as I read that, I reflected on the teachings of Dr. Gabor Mate. And over the past many decades, he's a trauma expert, Canadian-born. And I've referred to this many times in other talks, this idea of suffering caused by the contradiction of authenticity versus attachment. And the nut of it is that our need for belonging is so great that when faced with a choice, we will always choose attachment and safety than authentic self-expression. And so one day as adults, we wonder why it's so hard to speak our truth. We wonder why it's so hard to ask for what we want and to dare to name our desires. And this really brings me into the meat of my talk today, which I could have called In Search of Self. And it's this idea of designing a life that you want to live. Designing a life that is in service of your higher self. And the juiciest part of this search is to realize what can happen when you slow down long enough to listen. And to hear what it is your heart desires. And then to give yourself permission to have it. Now, as an example, I was in denial for years that I wasn't truly happy. in my marriage. And my husband knew it. I mean, obviously. But I pretended that the type of attention I received from him was enough, when it wasn't. And discovering this didn't make him a bad person. It actually highlighted the fact that I didn't know how to name or give a voice to my own needs. And so once I could identify that this was true, I could then gather up all of the courage to act in service of getting my own needs met. This is the philosophy of New Thought. New Thought philosophy is simply change your thinking, change your life. So all I had to do was change my thinking about what I deserve, and my life changed. It changed overnight. It changed in an instant. The instant I decided that more is possible, and that what I have wasn't working for me. And so this message that I wanna offer is that once I allowed myself to believe that I deserve to get my needs met and to be brave enough, I just had to have faith that all good things come to divine creatures. We are all here as divine creatures on this planet, and that pleasure is our birthright. We are allowed. And in order to get more of what we want, the only thing we have to do is believe that it's possible. And with that, I want to circle back to something I said at the opening. How we interpret our social and biological conditioning will describe our ability to design a life that feels uniquely our own, informed by the wisdom of previous generations. So to design a life that feels uniquely your own. What does that mean to you? To design a life that's uniquely your own. What do you think it requires to do this, if it's not already true? So this talk is about understanding the game of life that you want to play. And the instruction manual that I received in my training with Art International, ART stands for Authentic Relating Training, is the simple notion of setting context. And setting context is happening all the time, the context of this game that we're playing. Consumerism is a context. Capitalism is a context. Basketball is a context. And the more powerful and compelling the rules are, the more people want to play. And the clearer and easier the rules are to follow, then the better time you'll have enrolling people in the game of life that you want to play. And so I'm curious what is showing up for you when I talk about implicit rules to the game of life. And by implicit, I mean the things that aren't being said. What are the hidden, unconscious rules of life? We sleep at night. There are these 3 meals called breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We put clothes on when we go outside. I mean, what else doesn't need to be said? What are some examples of implicit context for living life?
Those rules about clothes we have to explain to the grandkids.
Because what did I say earlier about kids?
Yeah.
They're free and they're happy.
Yeah.
And they haven't learned yet about what they're supposed to do. Yeah. Yeah. What else might be an implicit context for life?
Be on time.
Great. Because why?
It's respectful.
Exactly. Yeah.
I say that.
Right. So if you were in a in a work situation, in a professional organization, it might be actually explicit. Show up for work at 9 o'clock and look professional. That might actually be an explicit context. It's named. Yeah. But you're right. It doesn't have to be named when it's like services at 11 o'clock. Like, it'd be really great if you were there on time. Yeah. So it's just inviting an awareness of the rules that are living in your system, in your belief system, that aren't necessarily named. And there's also this whole set of context that is explicit. 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Honor thy mother and father. Explicit context. Things that are made obvious. In a relationship, maybe you've had a conversation with your partner. Don't cheat on me. Maybe that's an explicit context within your relationship or your vows if you had any. You know, we make these agreements with each other. And what was a game changer for me is in my training with Art International, we did an exercise called Relationship by Design. And in that exercise, you partnered with someone you already knew, and you got to break down the rules, like, what kind of relationship do we want to have? And if we started at nothing, if we started from scratch, how do you want this to go? And you consider the needs of the individual, and then you consider the needs of the union. And you ask yourself, what works for me? What works for you? What works for us? It was a total game changer that this was a possibility, that I didn't have to follow a system or a prescript that was handed down to me from society or generations past. I could actually design the kind of relationship I wanted. And so I did. I came up with what would have me feel like I was in a relationship that met my highest and greatest needs. What would it feel like? How would I feel when I wake up in the morning if I was in that relationship? And I meditated on that feeling. Before I even had any person in mind, I just meditated on this feeling of having the kind of love that I wanted. And then I met Kevin. So if you know, it's harder if you don't know what you want. But when you know what you want, you can create a guidepost, a compass, to get you there. When I first went to this big arts festival in the desert in Nevada, known as Burning Man, I remember my first time going there. And as I went around and met people at different art camps, they would play music. And I continually found the music not to be the kind of music that I wanted to dance to. So I found myself going back to my camp and grumbling, they're not playing the kind of music I want. And what I learned is that this theme, this idea that is at the core of this talk, which is throw the party you want to go to. So what do you think I did the next time I went to this festival? Brought my own music! Yep. Got my own DJ, got my own sound system, got my own music, and I played the music that I wanted to dance to. Throw the party you want to go to. So I created the thing that I wanted in the place that I could create it and have the experience I wanted to have. When 1999 was becoming 2000, I realized that what I wanted more of in my life was deeper and more intimate relationships with the people I already knew. So I created a context, and I invited a handful of women who were close to me in my life to meet once a month and to go deep and to share our joys, our pain, our love, our trials in life, and together, as a team, we each achieved more and we raised each other up. And that was a very powerful context that lasted for 8 years. It's possible It's possible to create the context for your life that you want, to make your own rules, and the clearer you are, the easier it is to enroll other people. If anyone has heard Simon Sinek talk, he has a book called Start With Why. The subtext is how great leaders inspire action. And there's a YouTube talk from 2009 that he did. And it was all about starting with why. So when you tell people why it is that you want what you want, it makes it easier for empathy and compassion to come online and for them to go, I want that for you. I want to do that just because you want it, because I care about your pleasure. If you don't tell people why you want what you want, then there's less likely of a chance that you'll enroll them in the game of life that you want to play. So the most important piece of this is to start with your why when you want to enroll people and how you want to be in relationship. In any moment, if I were to say, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to invite one of you to design an activity for the next 5 minutes that gets your needs met. And if you're the kind of person that's thinking, oh, my body's kind of tight, I want to get up and stretch and move around, then maybe you're going to enroll the rest of us to get up, stretch, move our bodies, shake it out. Or maybe you need a moment of silence because you want to access inner peace. And you'll say, hey, Sheri, I want to spend the next 5 minutes having some quiet meditation time, and you'll guide us in that. Like, that's just an example of how, at any moment with any group of people, you can switch the context of what's happening and invite a new activity that can meet the needs of the people in the room at any moment. It's an invitation to never have a boring conversation again. Change the context. The reason I celebrate longing is because it's a pathway to manifest more of what I want. If you give yourself permission to change your mind about what you get to have, it can all be yours. The world is full of abundance, and scarcity is a mindset that benefits the 1%. If we buy into the idea that wealth is not for us, then it won't be. If we buy into the idea that travel is not possible, then it isn't. And if we believe or buy into the idea that love or happiness or joy is not for us, then it won't be. I'm going to end this by quoting Oprah. You get in life what you have the courage to ask for. Your only job is to turn yourself on and to light yourself up, because the world needs more people who have come along.